Now that I'm pretty much done with the chassis, I want to switch my attention to the screen. First thing I want to do is pop off this plastic cover so I can clean it. To do that, I need to first remove this piece of trim. It's held on by a couple Phillips screws, so I'll take those out. It's in pretty decent condition, unlike the arms. It's very common with these Predicta sets for the brass plating on the arms to wear away and for them to start rusting. In fact, on all 5 of my sets, the brass plating's in really crummy condition. I've been thinking about getting them all replated, but I haven't found a good place to do it yet, and I'm not sure what kind of prep work is involved. I got a feeling it'll be pretty expensive if I have them do it, if they're even willing to do it. And by prep work, I mean getting all this corrosion off and polishing them up, which I assume you need to do before you can put on the brass plating. Alright, now with that trim out of the way, inside of here there's a spring with pretty tight tension. That's what holds this plastic band on. You need to get that off to get the plastic cover off. So, done this a couple times before on other sets, and so you gotta use long nose pliers to get in there. There we go. Now getting it back on, that's another matter, but usually getting them off isn't too bad. Okay, so now we can get this off. Pretty good condition. It's like clear plastic that's been back painted, I think. Or maybe that's a real brass insert, I'm not quite sure. At any rate, I'll use a little bit of Novus polish on that. Alright, I'm going to get this cover off. It's a metal band that runs around. See that here? So this is the back, this is the front. They have these plastic ears that stick out, and there's a metal band with slots cut into it that fit around those tabs. And that's what I just loosened up when I put that spring out, I think. Let's see. No, I guess there's actually some screws down in there, I think. Let's see. Yeah, I guess there's some Phillips screws down in there. There we go. So I'll loosen that up. Should free up the tension in this band. Although actually, it's kind of loose as it is. I'll probably pop this loose. There we go. Guess it is easier if you just remove one end entirely, just loosening it off. One is really stuck on here. Alright, finally. I can finally get that piece of crap that was stuck in the corner up there out of the screen. Boy, does it stink. It's a very common problem with these Predictas. And I don't have any magic trick to getting rid of the stink other than just clean it really good. So you can see how much of a tint this cover is putting on the screen. I imagine the picture would be quite a bit brighter with that out of the way. Now, you can see over the years the high voltage static charge on that screen has attracted really fine black, like soot. So I'll grab some Windex and clean that off. Much better. Okay, now for the fun part. This plastic has got some pretty bad scrapes on it. They're fairly deep. I am going to get out my wet sanding materials and see what I can do about that. This plastic is fairly thick. Oh, maybe quarter of an, well, not a quarter of an inch, an eighth of an inch or so. So I can take down a bit of material without having to worry about weakening it much. So, see how well I can get these out. I've been making some pretty good progress with the wet sanding. In the worst areas I went with 320 grit, and then 400 grit, 600, 1000, 1500, then 2000. Then I'll switch to some buffing compounds. One thing you want to be really careful about is you don't sand too deeply in one small area. So say, for example, you get a deep scratch like right here. You can't just sand a little circle like that. You know, you get the scratch out and you can buff it out, but the problem is you've now made the plastic thinner here. When you hold this up to the light, you can kind of move it around in front of your face. You can see that you've now introduced an optical distortion in that area, like a lens with a different diffraction right in that one area. So even for a small scratch like this, you've got to do a pretty sizable area to feather that out, or even take the entire screen down to the depth of that scratch. Certainly a large area to minimize that optical distortion. It actually is fairly noticeable. If you, I know this by experience. You say you get a small scratch here and you really sand it aggressively and you buff it out and it looks good from certain angles. And then when you put it on the TV and you say there's a tree or something or fence, when you get by that curve, you'll see the fence is straight, then there's a little dip, and then it starts going straight again. So you got to be careful when you wet sand these screens. I just finished off with the 2000 grit, and certainly feels nice and smooth, but that's pretty hazy. So now comes the buffing. In the past I've gone with Novus number 3 and then Novus number 2, but I don't find 3 is really all that effective, so I'm just going to try going straight to number 2. Also in the past I've been doing this by hand with a cloth and squirt some on and just rub it around and buff it out and repeat as needed, but This time I'm going to go with power tool. I got one of these buffing pad adapters for my variable speed drill. I just tried using it for the first time. I squirted a little bit on here, and I guess the trick is to not go with too high a speed. So try something about like that, and work my way around. See how it works out. The polishing compound is dried to a haze, so I'm starting to buff it out now, and it's looking pretty good. I think I'll need to do another pass, but it's definitely looking pretty good. So I think you can see that that's pretty darn transparent, but there are still some surface scratches and abrasions, so I'll do another one or two passes and I think we'll finally be done with this. I had previously mentioned that there were adjustments behind this cover on the back here, so let's see what's inside there. By the way, this is the cover that I would have to extend outwards if I was to put in a replacement CRT with a longer neck. So let's see how much clearance there is. You see right now, this is, geez, just very close to the back. So if I have some that are maybe CRTs that are about an inch and a half longer, this cover is going to have to stick up, you know, about that much. So I could simply put in some spacers, have it stand up a bit. Alright, so what have we got inside? It's kind of hard to see, but I'll try zooming in there. I found a diagram inside this pocket service guide that explains what we're looking at. Now this is a picture of the tandem set, so it's got the extra vacuum tube and a little circuit board in there, which doesn't exist in this set, but the rest I believe is the same. So the keys to this are the horizontal centering magnet, the vertical centering magnet, and the horizontal linearity magnet. So we've got one magnet there, that should be the vertical, that's the horizontal centering there, and that lever down in there, that is the linearity. So let's see, to explain how you actually make those adjustments. No, they don't explain what to actually do with those. I think that might be in the SAM service info that I'll have to dig around. But obviously you make adjustments to these somehow. I think you just turn these. They don't seem to slide up or down or left or right, but they do rotate. And likewise this lever. Actually, no, I do recall reading on this lever thingy down here. I think you actually just bend this forwards or backwards. There's like a bar magnet here on this flexible bit of metal, and you can pull it up or push it down. Now, I don't want to monkey with that stuff just yet. I want to get this set back together, but once I do, those are where you make those adjustments. I need to clean the back of this. Just with some Novus number 2, should be fine. And then there's this brass. Every Predicta set I've got to varying degrees has corroded brass on it. I don't know why that is. Maybe they just used cheap brass plating. I don't know, but they're all like this. It's brass plated steel, and all of mine are pitted, and they got some rust issues. Ideally, I would like to get these replated, but to be honest, I don't know a whole lot about getting stuff plated. I've never had it done before. I'm not sure who's reputable. I'm not sure what, if any, prep work I need to do, or which is more cost and effort beneficial for me to do the prep work or to pay somebody else to do it. So I imagine you need to get rid of the rust and you need to grind down and get this super smooth. Right now it's really nasty and rough. I don't imagine you can plate right over that. So if any of you have any suggestions, recommendations for outfits that do brass plating and what kind of prep work is necessary and a ballpark figure and what it might cost, I'd really appreciate it. Now to really clean this plastic cover right and get in all the nooks and crannies, I want to unmount it. To do that, you need to pop off these end caps and undo a bolt on either end, and then you can take the plastic off from the CRT and the support arm. So I'm just trying to get my thumbnails in under there and slowly work it off. Don't want to damage these. I'm actually missing them from one of my tandem sets, and kind of been trying to find replacements. I found some that were chrome, like for plumbing fixtures. Found some that were brass plated, but they were not the right size. I think the correct dimensions are 7/8. In other words, the inner diameter of these pipe ends is 7/8 and these snap inside. So I'm on the lookout for a couple of these. And actually the ones I do have are kind of grungy too, so I guess ideally I get these re-brass plated. Well, you know, actually these might be solid brass now that I look at them more closely, because they look pretty pristine on the inside. So I'll get some metal polish on that. Maybe it's a solid brass. So maybe all the ones I currently have can be cleaned up, and then I just need to find another pair somewhere, somehow, someday. Alright, so with those out, let's see, where's my ratchet set? Now if you just want to do a little cleaning job on yours, I don't recommend going to this extent. There's always the potential for damaging some critical parts. I figure if I got it taken apart this far, might as well go all the way. I've done this once before, and I was on a little 17-inch Princess set. Somebody's taken this apart at least once before, though, because this is not the original picture, too. There's one side. There's the other. There's four little pins on the ends of these arms here, and that fits into the plastic. So it should, I think, just lift off. Supposed to be hung up on the base a little bit. Plastic's probably warped over time. Oh, I think there are actually a couple screws on the other side. Oh, and these arms come right off. So there's two pins on this end. You feed those into the base, and you rotate it. And then here's 4 pins that snap into the plastic. So as you can see, get these all cleaned up and prepped. It's pretty easy to ship these out to get replated. There's the other one. This side. Here's a screw. Didn't lose it. Definitely don't want to lose that. Damn, I wish I'd noticed that earlier. Two little stupid Phillips screws up front. Take a reference photo so I know exactly how to put this back together. Phew. Ta-da. And get to clean all that dirt out now too. Now that I was not expecting to see. This is actually a Philco CRT. Well, maybe they were around in business long enough to issue replacements. There's a label saying it's made from new parts. So this is not a rebuilt tube. Just see, well, it's got to be I see a P in part of an H and an O, so I assume that's Philco. Oh, here we go. Aha. This is indeed the official factory replacement. Check this out. Or maybe not the official factory replacement, but I mean this was the official replacement for the oh so crappy 21 EAP4. So this is the 21 FDP4, the thing that everybody wants to, that's the picture that everybody wants to find that's got old Predictas. I've never seen one for sale. Just the ones I showed in the previous segment that have the longer neck. But anyways, it says, well, I assume I'll fill in the blanks. I think it says, when installing this tube as a replacement for type 21 EAP4, the filament circuit in the receiver must be modified. See instructions packed with tube. That would be that multi-suction filament dropping resistor mentioned in previous segments. However, that's if you had 117 volts AC at the line, you might want to jumper those out. But with the higher line voltages we have now, no reason to jumper it out, so just ignore that. And then it's just a little 6V here. Another indication that this is a 6 volt picture tube, not a 2.35 volt picture tube. And I will, I think, put this on my bed for safekeeping while I finish cleaning up the plastic. Now that was disgusting. I imagine over the years the high voltage static charge in here attracted not only lots of dust but probably a lot of cigarette smoke too. I used some Spray 9, my new favorite all-purpose cleaner, to clean it out. I'm going to do a little bit more buffing on the outside with the Novus number 2, and then just put it back together. There's one major task left in this restoration project, and that's the cabinet. The cabinet's made of a combination of some real mahogany, this front edge here and its trim, and some cheap secondary wood with a photo finish on it. And as you can see, it's badly flaking off here, some in the back. And finally there are some sections of metal mesh that have been painted with faux mahogany wood grain. The metal mesh is fine. And the front's in pretty decent condition. There's some kind of mark here. I'm hoping that won't clean off. Maybe a little touch up a stain on a little edge here. But I definitely want to preserve this photo finish. That would be rather difficult to reproduce especially with this logo and the stripe and so on. The metal mesh here is just fine. The real mahogany I can strip and refinish, no problem. Sides are in decent shape. Legs, just like on the support arms for the CRT, they're steel with a really crappy brass plating that has badly deteriorated, so I'll get these replated someday if feasible, which leaves this. So really, I think if I could just deal with this section and this section, I'll be in good shape. Now, I've been mulling over a few possibilities. First one that jumped to mind was to use a real veneer, because I just happen to have a little stash of some rather nice mahogany veneer that looks actually quite a bit like this faux finish. Just imagine this with some stain and some finish on it. Just one minor issue with that is if I was to just say do this center rectangular section, I can carefully cut this out and get this to be flush with the groove there and all. But this is going to be up a bit higher. You know, whatever thickness this is, a 32nd of an inch or whatever, it's going to stick proud of this edge here. Not the end of the world. So that's I guess the most straightforward possibility or solution to this. Or actually, I take a step back. I guess the simplest possible thing you could do is just paint or stain this. Leave or remove the remaining old stuff and just try to coat this. I doubt this will take stain very well. It's probably got some kind of sealer residue from the old photo finish. But yeah, you could mask off this stuff and spray this some kind of red mahogany toner lacquer or something. I suppose it'd be passable from like maybe a 10-foot distance, but I'd like to do a little bit better than that. So there's the veneer. Another possibility someone mentioned online was Dynoc, which is self-adhesive vinyl product with comes in all kinds of different patterns and colors. I guess most famously this is used on cars like station wagons, that fake wood grain they would put on. A little bit expensive, but you know, if you peel off the backing and you adhere this to the substrate, and bam, there you go, done, finished, good to go. Now the grain isn't quite the right perfect match. The color isn't quite a perfect match. And there's also an issue of, will this even adhere to this substrate? I think the ideal surface for this is like bare, clean, flat steel or glass, something very, very hard and smooth. But it's probably possible to scrape off the remains of this, sand it, seal it with something, and this would adhere. But I'm not crazy about it. The slight difference in grain, a slight difference in color, this will also stick up a bit. And it's just doesn't have the right sheen. I mean, this is vinyl. It's not wood, or it's not like lacquer finish. It's definitely, you know, it's a bit jarring, I think. And then there's one final possibility that I've thought of so far, which is to take a look at what guys have done for radios with photo finishes. Philco made a whole bunch of radios in the 30s that had photo finish on them. And there's at least one website devoted to techniques to replicate that. Simplest one of which is to find a good image of wood grain, like take a nice clear photo of a section of this, print it out. You know, like on a color inkjet printer. If you get the scale right, good quality paper, nice sharp image, you can actually print this stuff out, and it looks pretty good. Glue it down and clear coat it, and it looks surprisingly good. Another technique is to get a black and white image of wood grain and then color it with like stains or toner lacquers. So I think I'll give that a shot. I mean, what the heck, I got an inkjet printer, I got paper, it's certainly worth giving a try and see how that looks. And that would also be quite easy to do. Just, you know, once I have my good replica photo finish on paper, clear off the remains of this, and then glue it down. Then recommend, I think, some type of 3M spray adhesive. Oh, and this comes out pretty easily. There's 4 bolts from below, so this can be taken out while I work on the set. So I'll ponder and experiment with that. In the meantime, I'm going to move on to some other projects.